Good morning. Welcome to Westside Unitarian Universalist Church, where compassion leads us to work for justice and equality. I'm glad you came today. It's my hope you will find something here that nourishes your heart, feeds your mind, and grows your spirit. To all of you that are joining us on Facebook Live this morning, welcome. Keep an eye out on our weekly email for updates on our ongoing reopening, as well as how to access our service online each week. My name is Carol Kappa, and I'm the worship associate this morning. Be you a spiritual seeker, an atheist, or a theist, whether you find inspiration in the great books or the great outdoors or great conversations, all are welcome in our inclusive congregation. To newcomers and old friends both, together we say, welcome. A special thank you to our volunteers and staff this morning, our AV person Donald Kennard, our chalice lighter Debbie Rake, our social justice chair Cindy Fountain, as well as our director of lifespan religious education Nikki Kennedy, pianist Yuki Kumamoto, sexton Jean McKeon, and our office administrator Don McGee. Our guest speaker today is Reverend Jami Yandel. You will be hearing from them during the Time for All Ages and the meditation time, as well as the reflection. Jami Yandel uses the pronouns they or them and is a non-binary board-certified hospice chaplain serving in Austin, Texas. Jami is a graduate of Union Theological Seminary and was ordained by the First Unitarian Church of Toledo in 2018. They initiated and facilitated the revision of our Unitarian Universalist second source to honor words and deeds of prophetic people rather than prophetic women and men. Additionally, Jami is the newest board member on the TXUUJM, that's the Texas Unitarian Universalist Justice Ministry, and is looking forward to helping lead social justice actions throughout Texas in 2022. Jami enjoys creating and facilitating workshops and retreats related to chaplaincy, mental health, and trauma response at regional, institutional, and religious, spiritual, and educational sectors all across the United States and within the UUA as well. I'd just like to take a minute here to recognize that we are back in the church this month. This is our fourth Sunday in a row, as well as the Christmas Eve service 2 nights ago, for the first time in a long time. And we're still taking necessary COVID precautions, and we all still need to be careful to keep our community safe. But the hard work of our reopening task force, community nurse Kim Hart, and the other volunteers and staff that worked really hard to get us here deserves recognition. And I want to thank them very much for each and every one of them for all they've done. And it's because of you that I can thank you in person here on Page Avenue. And also, we just want those of you that are here live to know that the Wi-Fi will be turned off during our service. Now, just please make yourself comfortable during this service. Sit, stand, rock, wiggle, or be still as a silent night. I think we all got a little used to that while we attended from home. And as we prepare to listen to this morning's prelude, please turn all cell phones completely off so that the signals do not interfere with our hearing assistive devices. And now, let us worship together. Our opening words come from Reverend Gretchen Haley of Foothills Unitarian Universalist Church in Fort Collins, Colorado, called Still So Much Good and Beauty and Joy. Come in, all who long to know how to love this world, how to keep eyes open, hands unclenched, arms wide, breathing deeply in and out. This is a time to practice because there is still so much good and beauty and joy. But it can be hard to keep telling this tale with all the news and the wind and the rain and the trembling earth. Who wants to love this life anyway? Come in, all who teeter on this edge of cynicism, brokenhearted, and trying still to remember laughter and kindness, and the chance to be alive in these days when so much is at stake. In this place, we remind each other why we persist, giving each other courage to take this path that is not always easy, to keep practicing this love that cannot, will not let us go, and still calls us on. Come, let us worship. And at this time, I invite forward Westside member Debbie Rake to light our chalice today. The flaming chalice is a symbol of both the heritage of our past and the light of hope within this church today. And if you have a chalice at home with you, please light it with us.
Deep calls unto deep. Joy calls unto joy. Light calls unto light. Let the kindling of this flame rekindle in us the inner light of love, of peace, of hope. And as one flame lights another, nor grows the less, we pledge ourselves to be bearers of the light wherever we are.
There is always a light. When we're ready to see it, there's always a light. When we're ready to be it, to see the light, to be the light, to raise our arms in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There's always a light. There's always a light. When we're ready to see it, there's always a light. There's always a light. When we're ready to be it, to see the light, to be the light, to raise our arms in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There's always shout of light. There's always joy when we see it. There's always shout of light. There's always joy when we see it. See the light, be the light, raise our arms in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There's always shout of light. There's always joy when we see it. There's always shout of light. There's always joy when we see it. See the light, be the light, raise our arms in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will be alive.
Shine your light in the darkness. Shine your light in the darkness.
To see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night,
and be a
to climb this hill,
in the
together we will.
Shine your light in the darkness. Shine your light in the darkness. Let your bright heart burn out loud. Be a
And now please stand or sit tall and join me in reciting our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. And now please remain as you are and join me in our opening hymn, number 147, When All the Peoples on This Earth. And our time for all ages today will be a video presented by our guest speaker, the Reverend Jami Yandel.
We March by Shane W. Evans. The morning is quiet. The sun rises. And we prepare to march. We pray for strength. We work together. We come from all over to march. We follow our leaders. We walk together. We sing.
Freedom in the history of our nation. This note was a promise.
We are hot and tired, but we are filled with hope.
Black men as well as white men would be guaranteed the
We lean on each other.
of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
As we march to justice,
Seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of
to freedom,
hatred.
to our dreams.
Dream.
And now, let us sing number 118, This Little Light of Mine. We'll just sing through the first verse. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. And at this time, I invite Kim Hart, a member of our pastoral care team, to share the joys and concerns of the congregation. As we share our joys with others, those joys are multiplied. As we share our concerns, our community can offer its care. Anyone can submit a joy or concern by emailing the pastoral care team at pastoralcare@westsideuu.org or through the web form that's located at the program tab on our church's website. You click on Care and Support. The only concern that I know of is that Jana Kennard had to stay home today. She was going to be here with me on the podium for a few things, but she needed to stay home because her daughter Chloe was having some issues with the allergies and having some problems, so she needed to stay home. And their new puppy fell off the couch, and his legs are bothering him right now. Can't move his legs, so the vet says it will hopefully improve. Just has to rest and watch it and not get too excited and hyper. So be thinking about Jana and Donald and their family today. Sharing draws our community closer together. Please know that your pastoral care associates are also available to support you one-on-one with the ups and downs that life brings. We are here. And as we hold all the joys and challenges among us, both those spoken and those that remain unsaid, let us sing number 1009 in the Teal hymnal, Meditation on Breathing. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Reverend Yandle will now lead our meditation.
Today's meditation is words by Mary Oliver. This poem is called Don't Hesitate. If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give in to it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind, and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back. That sometimes something happens better than all of the riches or power in the world. It could be anything, but very likely you notice it in the instant when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy is not meant to be a crumb.
Let's go into a moment of silence. I'm going to ring the bell, and we'll go into a moment of silence, and then I'll ring it. May it be so. Blessed be. And at this time, I'd like to welcome our social justice representative and chair, Cindy Fountain, to tell you about the recipient of our plate offering today. You can give in person today or on the Vanco mobile app anytime. Just select the Sunday plate offering.
Good morning. In the spirit of generosity, we reach out to the wider community. Today, we do that by donating 100% of our weekly offering to the Texas UU Justice Ministry, Texas TXUUJM. If you're contributing to your pledge instead, please use the small envelope at the bottom of the bowl. The Texas UU Justice Ministry is a statewide justice ministry that raises the voice of Unitarian Universalist values in the public arena and seeks to have those values enacted into legislation and promulgated in public policy. Texas UU Justice Ministry will educate and organize member congregations and partner with sympathetic organizations, guided by our UU principles. Westside has been a member congregation since 2012, and with this connection, we became aware of the Just Texas program that invited churches to become reproductive justice congregations. We did that in 2017. We secured grant money so that local organizations like Raices and United Fort Worth could hold meetings here. Each Texas legislative session, Texas UU Justice Ministry keeps congregations informed of the top priorities where we UUs can make our voices heard. This morning's offering will be most gratefully received.
Thank you, Yuki. Lovely. Thank you for putting into practice here at Westside the spiritual virtue of generosity. Our giving connects us further to the wider web. And now we'll hear from Reverend Jami.
The reading for today is from the book we are using in service called We March by Shane W. Evans. It's the last page in the book, and it's written by the author. And it's very important. And it frames the book, and it explains exactly what happened. On August 28th, 1963, more than 250,000 people gathered in our nation's capital to participate in the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. The march began at the Washington Monument and ended with a rally at the Lincoln Memorial, where iconic musicians gathered and performed, and Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his historic speech, I Have a Dream. Throughout history, there have been many organized marches when people walk together to advance a common goal. The Selma to Montgomery March, which consisted of 3 separate marches that took place in March of 1965, was held to focus attention on the civil rights movement and the need for outlawing racial discrimination. The routes are now memorialized at as the Selma to Montgomery voting rights trail. Following these marches, the country enacted two pieces of legislation that were crucial for moving the country towards racial equality. The first was the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which banned racial segregation in public schools, public places, and in select workplaces. The second was the National Voting Rights Act of 1965, which outlawed discriminatory voting practices that denied many African Americans the right to vote. It takes people of all ages and cultural backgrounds to move a nation into a new era of freedom. In a sense, these marches pushed old ideas out of the way and moved new ideas forward. History shows that where there is change, there will often be resistance to change. However, these events demonstrate that through action and determination, people have the power to overcome that resistance. I've always been inspired by the idea of people coming together, joining hands in prayer, lifting their voices in song, and marching towards freedom. Good morning, Westside congregation. I am pleased to be with you this morning, and I am new to Austin, Texas, and Texas in general. And I just want to let you know I had something called Cowboy Queso recently, and I just feel like whatever queso I had before did not qualify as Cowboy Queso. So needless to say, I'm enjoying my time here in Texas, and I have found Texans to be extremely loyal, very hospitable, and tough, and just overall good people. So all of that to say, I'm excited to be with the UU congregation this morning, and I am coming to you from Austin, Texas, and I haven't always been so privileged to be in such a liberal city. And I moved here from a small town in South Carolina called Gaffney, and most of the residents don't believe that COVID is real. I felt like I was the only liberal person for miles and miles. During this time living in Gaffney, I tried hard to maintain my sense of self. I felt like something as simple as going to the grocery store was automatically exponentially harder because I just didn't blend in. I looked so very different than most of the residents. There were Trump signs everywhere, even after the election. And the church marquees signs regularly informed passerbys of how they were most assuredly going to hell for their sins. As an out queer person, I was definitely one of those people that was headed for hell in their eyes. The nearest UU church was over an hour away, and I had to dig deep to remain grounded. This is when I learned about joy as resistance. I had to work to find and keep my happiness, which meant hours at the one hiking trail in town, which thankfully was tucked into the deep woods. There were little to no people on the trail, and it was one of those situations where it was so quiet you could hear your ears ring. On those trails where I hiked, I worked out my anger and my sadness, and soon enough, the trees and crunchy ground from all the leaves melted my grievances entirely away. I thought a lot about how my joy was resistance. The conservatives in that city, who were eager to get me into their church to rid me of my sin, would not win. I would show them that one could be both marginalized and happy, because I was. I was living the truest life I could, because years before I had done the careful work to liberate myself, so I could weather storms exactly like this one. I had done a lot of work to come out of the closet in my sexuality and gender identity and expression. I was happier and healthier after I came out as trans, and no one or any person or institution or organization or system could strip me of the kind of self-celebration I have in honoring my true and authentic self. This kind of power where I made myself confident, almost invincible, this kind of power is only born from joy, and it is linked to our humanity in a very sacred way. This is not a new concept. Audre Lorde wrote about it in the 1970s. She explored using this energy of joy for change. She wrote, "The sharing of joy, whether physical, emotional, psychic, or intellectual, forms a bridge between the sharers, which can be the basis for understanding much of what is not shared between them, and lessens the threat of their difference. The energy she wrote about is palpable and is a tool in change. It is the same energy that helped Martin Luther King Jr. sing and yell joyfully at rallies and protests. And that joy brought us the beginning of the civil rights. When I was present at Occupy Wall Street as a protest chaplain, we definitely had songs of happiness that created joy. We noticed on the days when we sang louder and more in unison that there were far less arrests. That night we were raided by police. We failed to have any music. It was late, and most of the occupiers, as well as our chaplains present that night, including myself, put away our guitars and bullhorns to get some rest. I always wondered, what if we sang into the night? What effect would that have had, and would it have been enough to keep the cops at bay? I learned recently my thinking made sense. Research shows the evidence of bodily connection when joy is present. Singing together does a beautiful thing to the human body. Heartbeats will match when two or more people sing or hum the same song together. And musicians playing a riff in conjunction have been observed in having the same parts of their brain lit up. These experiences of unison create a connectivity that runs through all things. And this connectivity is needed for our very survival. Elie Wiesel once described a memory of a fellow prisoner trading a ration of bread for materials with which to piece together a makeshift menorah during Hanukkah. Shocked that the man would trade something so essential to his survival, Wiesel asked him, "Hanukkah and Auschwitz?" And the man replied, "Especially in Auschwitz." Jewish people utilized their community to have a celebration that night. They nodded and came together in joy and happiness, acknowledging one another. The Nazi guards, try as they might, were unable to still Elie Wiesel's joy and hope. The language of oppression is one of scarcity and fear, and joy is a nonviolent way to protest oppression and injustice. It is also needed in the long haul in our present circumstance. There is so much trauma around us and so many different kinds of hardships we are living through. Trauma will actually change the plasticity in the brain, creating symptoms of PTSD. But allowing ourselves to feel and cultivate joy is a way to combat it. Joy is especially important in the life of a marginalized person. The work of dismantling white supremacy while also occupying a body of color, for instance, is made exponentially harder. This is why the activist group of Fullerton called Upset Homegirls was formed during the Black Lives Matter protests last year. Typically, protesters moved around holding signs, occasionally leading chants, but this group asked folks in attendance at the protest to dance. It's important, even in all of that bad space, to bring all of that goodness, said Brandy Factory, a founding member of Upset Homegirls, because you can't find anything without love, and because you can't fight anything without love. And I think there's a lot of love that's rooted in Black joy. When I think of Unitarian Universalists answering the call to love, this is what I think of: our yellow shirts and our effervescent spirit at protests calling in love directly in the face of injustices. This is exactly the kind of resilience needed to create cultural and sustained joy. So how do we cultivate joy, especially in dismal situations? Because joy is easy to feel at a wedding or a graduation, but what about the day-to-day, when the grind of living catches up with us? Well, joy can be found all around us if we just focus on it. Things such as the laughter of our grandchild or the way our dog wags their tail when we come home from work. The more we slow down and observe these simple joyous moments, the more we ourselves become joyous. Another way to cultivate joy is to name 3 things you are grateful for daily. After 30 days of this practice, the pathways in our brains change and we become happier, and the hard things become just a little easier. And bonus, our brains are filled with that good chemical that brings joy. Additionally, self-enrichment can lead us to joy. Taking care of yourself should feel indulgent, and maybe you might even feel guilty. And that is how you know you are doing it right. Audre Lorde wrote, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgent, it is self-preservation. and that is an act of political warfare. Finding joy in self-enrichment goes beyond drinking a glass of water, because joy isn't just about maintenance. It's a full liberation and freedom. Give yourself permission to do that which brings you joy as often as possible. For me, that is playing the guitar. I am not very good at it. It is taking a long time to learn, but the very sound of my guitar makes this noise, is all I can describe it as, that brings me immense joy and soothes my soul on a tough day caring for patients with COVID in my job as a hospice chaplain. As a congregation, you can feel joy together too. Now through Zoom and blended services, there's plenty of opportunities to have fellowship and to have that time together for you. Other UU congregations are experiencing a similar joy in being able to gather together. Also, even in the unknown of new viruses coming forward, there are still ways to be united in this, and one of them is through Zoom. And it is important to know it's okay to keep checking in on one another, and that even if you're not feeling totally joyful, going through the motions can sometimes give you that kind of peace that can kickstart it. And it's important to note that happiness is different than joy. Happiness is fleeting and based on external circumstances, but joy is a magical internal thing that is related to hope. And we live in a world that requires us to constantly fight against injustices and rampant pain, and we need something that is more grounded and rooted. Joy, when cultivated and made into a spiritual discipline, is the most important thing besides love to help create the better world we know is possible. We can only do this with one another, and we need more joy than ever to help make that possible. I want to see more of the kind of joy which helps everyone know you matter, you are important, and we need each other to survive. I am looking forward to continuing to build with you, knowing that the full incarnation of Unitarian Universalism resides in our bodies and in our congregations. You are so, so sacred, and you are so, so important to our future. So let us choose joy in each other and pave the way for the brokenness to wholeness. Amen, and blessed be.
And now let's sing our closing hymn, number 29, Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee.
Before thee, hail thee as the sun above.
My benediction today is just one sentence, and it comes from the wisdom of Glennon Doyle. May we all live in communities where every person's truest self is both held and free. Amen and blessed be.
Thank you for being here with us today. When we meet again next week, we will be, our year of 2021 will be over, and we'll be starting a new year, 2022. And join us as Tanner Trask will be our speaker. Please join me in the congregational closing. Let us go in peace, believe in peace, and create peace in our lives and in the world. May it be.